way, if you go to our website, KIDO Talk Radio, you have a story there concerning the death penalty and Timmy Kenner, whether or not the prosecution will seek the death penalty. We'll talk a little bit about that and take your phone calls. But again, this is not the time for hype or hyperbole or anything else. It really comes down to, letting the career professional prosecutors do their job. We have the utmost confidence in them. It's nice to hear that you have local businesses raising funds. It goes to show you that, unlike the national narrative, that people in Idaho are full of love, full of charity, full of happiness. And really, when you see the outpouring, it is amazing. It is refreshing to see this. Although the tragedy, we continue to pray for those people that are recovering, the children, the 3-year-old who was lost, and others. Certainly they're in our thoughts and our prayers. And even if we are from different places and different backgrounds, we all come together. So it's wonderful to see. We'll have more on that throughout the morning. And take your phone calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Joining us now from Tea Party Patriots, Bill Pasco. Bill, good to have you with us. Good morning.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Good to have you here in Idaho. Let's talk a little bit about the president last night was on fire. I don't know if you caught any of it in Montana, just really laying the wood to Senator Tester and others. What's at stake in the upcoming midterms election, sir?
Well, I think what's at stake essentially is the Trump agenda. In 2016, the country made a choice after decades of both Republican and Democrat politicians, both in the Congress and in the White House, leading us in a certain direction. I think the country had decided by 2016 that they were sick and tired of that direction. They wanted a change, and they were willing to put a bull into the china shop. And so for the first time certainly in our lifetimes, if not our memories, we've got a non-politician who is elected president. He came in with an agenda. He was going to fight for reciprocal trade, fair trade with our trading partners. He was going to put constitutionalists, conservative constitutionalist judges on the bench throughout the federal judiciary, people who understood that the job of a judge is to apply the law as written, not to make new law from the bench. He wanted to unshackle American businesses. We had come out of a Great Recession in 2008 with the weakest recovery in the post-war era, where we didn't ever even achieve 2.5% growth in any given year. He said that's not the American economy I know and love. That's not the American economy I expect. And if we can put the right people in place in the cabinet and throughout the top levels of government, we can unshackle the American economy. And we've seen unemployment drop to its lowest level in decades. We're going to get a new jobs number in less than half an hour. At 8:30 Eastern time this morning, they'll release the new jobs number, and economists are expecting that we're still going to see unemployment under 4%. For the first time, we saw just about a week ago, it was reported for the first time in anybody's memory, we now have more jobs open looking for employees to fill them than we have unemployed people looking for work. That's the kind of problem that you want to have. Because the reverse, of course, where you've got too few jobs and too many people unemployed, that's what we were dealing with for a long time. So all of this is at stake in the 2018 elections. The Democrats want to take America in a different direction. Democrats have made clear they want to increase taxes. They want to have a larger government takeover of the healthcare system. Many leading Democrats, potential 2020 candidates for president, are talking about a one-payer system, Medicare for all. Sounds great until you realize that means taking away the employer-provided insurance that most people have and that they're very happy with. So the entire Trump agenda is at stake in 2020. President Trump yesterday was in Montana, as you point out, because you've got a Democrat, Jon Tester, running for re-election there in a state that President Trump carried by almost 20 points. A week ago, President Trump was in North Dakota, where Heidi Heitkamp, the Democrat senator, is running for re-election in a state that President Trump won by more than 30 points, if I remember correctly. So there's 10 of these Democrat senators up for re-election in states that President Trump carried, and he's going to be campaigning hard for the Republican nominees in all of those states so he can increase the number of Republicans in the Senate, and he can continue then to have his nominees confirmed. He can continue to move the country forward with his agenda.
Bill Pasco joining us, Tea Party Patriots on 107.5 FM, 580 AM with Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's talk a little bit about the House, because it's crucial. Bill, isn't it crucial that the Republicans maintain control of the House, not just to help the president, but to protect the president from some threats that we've been hearing from the Democrats?
Well, you're absolutely right, Kevin. The most important part about controlling the House is you control the gavels. That is, you control the committee chairmanships. And we know that when Democrats are in control of the House with a Republican president, we know that that's a 2-year slog of investigations and subpoenas and hearings, and they're like gnats. They're just an annoyance. They're going to get in the first off, they're not going to move any legislation that President Trump would want. But as importantly as that, it simply becomes a 2-year show trial of one investigation after another, one hearing after another. And that's not what the country wants. The country wants to move ahead. The country wants to see more businesses created, more jobs created. President wants to move forward on his trade agenda. Just this morning, just a few hours ago at 12:01 a.m., tariffs went into effect. He is fighting back against what he believes are unfair trade practices by many of our major trading partners, including the Chinese, one of our largest trading partners. So we have slapped tariffs on $34 billion worth of Chinese imports. The Chinese have turned right around and said, oh, you don't get to do that for free. We're going to raise tariffs on $34 billion of your imports. Now, the people look at this and you know, there's an old saying, nobody wins a trade war. And in the long term, I certainly agree with that. The evidence is clear. But in the short term, as he's fighting for more reciprocal trade practices, that is less advantages for the other side and disadvantages for the American side, and keep in mind, the American economy is massive. The American economy is much larger than Chinese. We've got a $19.5 trillion economy. We're talking about tariffs on $34 billion worth of goods. This is literally a drop in the bucket. It's a pinprick in the size of our overall economy. But it sends an important signal that he's not going to be like previous presidents of both parties. He's not going to stand for the unfair trade practices any longer, and he's going to do something about it. So that's where we are with that. I think the Congress is in a wait-and-see mode. There are some people who are trying to take away the president's power to do that in both parties. Again, this is an establishment thing versus the rest of the country. And it kind of speaks to one of the points that I make when I go out and I talk to groups, and that is the biggest political divide in America is not between Republicans and Democrats. It's not even between conservatives and liberals. The biggest political divide in America is between those inside the Washington Beltway and the rest of us around the country who pay their salaries. That's the biggest political divide. It's not partisan. It's not ideological. It's establishment versus the grassroots. And President Trump is fighting for the grassroots, and that's one of the biggest reasons that you see so much opposition to him from inside the Washington Beltway.
Bill Pasco joining us, Tea Party Patriots. Bill, if people want to get a hold of the Tea Party Patriots, get involved, get active, whether in Idaho or anywhere else, what can they do?
TeaPartyPatriots.org on the web. That's the central hub. You can find the legislation that we're tracking. You can see our Washington report every Monday. We do a Facebook Live broadcast at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll post video of that. We do it live, but then we keep the video posted. You can get our Washington report. You can find out what campaigns we're particularly interested in. Our Super PAC has a link. The Tea Party Patriots Citizens Fund is the Super PAC that we use to engage politically. So there are a lot of races. And right there in Idaho, one of our endorsed candidates, Russ Fulcher, won the primary. And he'll be looking to replace Raul Labrador. We're very sorry to see Congressman Labrador go. He still is until the end of this Congress. He is a great representative for Idaho. He's a strong constitutional conservative. We're very pleased that Russ won the primary and will be fighting to retain that seat for the Republicans, and hopefully will be a new voice in the House Freedom Caucus.
Bill, what about the Supreme Court? How do you think it's going to play out? The president's expected to make his decision soon. Not only who he's going to pick and why it's important, but getting him through the Senate, whether it's squishy Republicans or militant Democrats?
That's a great question. Well, one of the keys to Donald Trump's victory, both for the nomination and for the general election, was that back in the spring of 2016, he knew that there were an awful lot of conservatives who care an awful lot about the court system. And they didn't know him. He had no credibility with them. He hadn't been fighting in the judicial battles for decades. So he asked people who did have credibility at the Federalist Society and at the Heritage Foundation. He said, I want you guys to help me. You're working with me on my campaign. You're advising me. You're counseling me. What can we do about this? And they came up with a list. And they said, look, these are all people who have been vetted. They are strict constitutionalists. They are people who understand that the job of a judge is to apply the law as written, not to make new law from the bench. That's the job of the legislature. And so he put out that list. And with his first Supreme Court pick, we saw he hit a home run. He picked Neil Gorsuch from Colorado, and Gorsuch has been a great addition to the court. So the president, when Justice Kennedy announced last week that he was going to retire effective July 31, the president went right back to the list and said, hey, guess what? My second pick is also going to come from that list. That's extraordinarily important. Now, we got a couple of Republican senators, Senator Collins from Maine and Senator Murkowski from Alaska, who have indicated that they want to make sure that Roe v. Wade stays in place. And we're hearing other senators talk about stare decisis, which is that's a Latin term that basically means leave it as it stands. This is the notion in the law that precedent is important, and we don't overturn precedent unless there's a very good reason to do so. And so they're trying to box a nominee into promising that I would never vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. Well, guess what? If precedent is important, tradition is important. It's important that people understand that the law is the law today and will be that same law in the future so they can adjust their behavior accordingly. But precedent isn't everything. Remember, in 1896, we had a case called Plessy versus Ferguson that institutionalized racism by the Supreme Court. And it wasn't until almost 60 years later that the Supreme Court in Brown v. Board of Education overturned that and desegregated American public schools. So precedent is important, but it's not determinative. Precedent can be overturned. I think that's going to be one of the things we're going to have to look at Collins and Murkowski, but we're also going to have to look at red state Democrats. You've got 10 Democrat senators running for re-election in states that President Trump carried. Back in the summer of 2017, 3 of them, Joe Manchin in West Virginia and Joe Donnelly in Indiana and Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota, all 3 voted for Gorsuch. They voted to confirm President Trump's choice to the Supreme Court. They're going to be under remarkable pressure to do the same thing, frankly, regardless of who he names, for political reasons, because they're running for re-election in states that President Trump carried. And they don't want to be crosswise of Trump on something as important as a Supreme Court nominee, casting that vote just a month before the election. We expect that the confirmation hearings are going to take place next month during August, what traditionally would have been the August recess. And we expect a vote in September so that the new Supreme Court justice could take his or her seat on the court when they open for business in the first week of October. So we'll have to look at both sides. There's a couple of Republican senators in play. There's a couple of Democrat senators in play. And, depending on which nominee it is, you may bring other senators' votes into play. For instance, one of the so-called finalists that we've been told about is Amy Coney Barrett, who was confirmed to a seat on the Court of Appeals just last year. And Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat, in fact, a Democrat who was Hillary Clinton's running mate, voted to confirm Judge Barrett to her seat on the Court of Appeals. So if she were to become the nominee, how does Virginia Democrat Senator Tim Kaine then announce, oh, yeah, I thought she was good enough for the federal bench last year and I voted to confirm her, but Now that she's been nominated to the Supreme Court, I have significant reservations. I'm going to vote against her. He's up for re-election this year. So that would be a tough vote for Kaine to justify. There's all kinds of different permutations here. We're going to see what happens at 9 o'clock on Monday night when the president unveils his choice.
Bill Pasco, we appreciate you. One more time, the website for people that want to get involved with Tea Party Patriots?
Really simple, Kevin. TeaPartyPatriots.org. TeaPartyPatriots.org. That's the central hub.
Bill, we appreciate you. You have a great day, sir.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Bill Pasco joining us. Coming up next, your reaction. And the president in the West. When is he coming to Idaho? Let's work on that together. We'll talk about it next at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning. And we start off this Friday with good old Liberal Steve at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberal Steve.
Top of the morning to you, Idaho. My sadness this morning is perked up a little more. Ed Schultz passed. He was a good man.
Yeah, did you know Ed?
Oh, I personally knew Ed, yes. Yes, knew Ed well.
I appeared on several national shows with Ed. I met him a couple times.
Yeah, he's a good guy off camera. Put a camera on him, though, he changes totally. But no, he's a good guy on camera, too. But he'll be missed. He'll be missed. He was a good liberal.
Okay, can we get to the point of your conversation?
Point of my conversation is I'm so glad that idiot Stick that was here in Idaho, shame on Idaho for even bringing him in, shame on 580 for even interviewing him. Pruitt is gone. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say this.
Traffic and weather together at KIDO Talk Radio.
And this November, I need you to get your friends, get your colleagues, get your neighbors, and get your ass out to vote. Is that okay? Get your ass out to vote.
I would tell you, the president in Idaho would be even bigger. Of course, Montana, they've got a competitive Senate race, and that's why the president is there. Here's what the president had to say about that rather strange climber on Lady Liberty.
You saw that clown yesterday on the Statue of Liberty? You see the guys that went up there? I wouldn't have done it. I would have said, let's get some nets and let's wait till she comes down. Just get some nets. Really. You see those guys, the bravery of doing that? What a group. We protect ICE and our Border Patrol and our law enforcement.
There you have it. The liberal elites just don't get it. But the president to a rambunctious crowd in Great Falls, Montana.
All right. You can right your wrong in November, okay? You can right your wrong.
And we'll see how that plays out. We'll hear more from the president coming up. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. As Liberal Steve said, a couple stories, sadly, that Liberal talk show host Ed Schultz has died. I knew Ed professionally. We appeared on Hardball together for several years. Also appeared with him a couple times at a couple GOP conventions. At one time, a conservative talk show host. Then he went to the liberal side, and at one time was almost trying to be the next Sean Hannity or Rush Limbaugh of the libs. Didn't really work out for Ed, although very successful at MSNBC and other places. He died at a very young age of 64. Our best to him and to his family. Also, EPA Director Scott Pruitt has resigned under the unrelenting pressure from the libs and everything else. Of course, you remember when Director Pruitt was here, now former Director Pruitt, in the Treasure Valley. There was one place that he went to get his side of the story out, and that was with us. If you want to hear that interview with Director Pruitt, where he talks about the demands of the job, where he talks about being in the spotlight, where he shares with us what it's like to be the target of the libs, you can go to KIDOTalkRadio.com. You can see the video of that interview along with the entire interview that we had on the radio. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at a few national stories. Then we're going to hear what Pete from Mountain Home has to say All that before 7 a.m. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
Our friend Pete in Mountain Home, hang on. We're going to get to you in a second. First, to Capitol Hill, Rachel Sutherland joins us, Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio. Rachel, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
Here I was all set to get that rousing review of that rambunctious rally in Montana, and yet Scott Pruitt stepping down steals the show.
Kind of does. Yeah, Scott Pruitt, as you know, has been under fire for just months and months, practically his whole tenure, when reports started surfacing about using taxpayer money for trips, and then there was that infamous $43,000 soundproof telephone booth installed in his office. He apparently was getting cheap rent from somebody who had ties to the oil industry. So, I'm not sure what it was that broke the camel's back here, but I was actually chatting with my colleague Jared Halpern, and I said, it's weird to have a slow news day. And he was like, shh. And then we thought, well, what if Scott Pruitt goes this week? And that's exactly what happened.
You have to wonder. I mean, he hung on for so long and weathered so many storms, and yet you wonder what was the final straw.
Yeah, and that's a little unclear right now. President Trump is saying good things about Scott Pruitt, saying he did a good job, but he did accept his resignation. I don't believe he talked him out of it. Sometimes things go on behind closed doors that we just don't know about. But he, the president had defended Pruitt and was praising his job performance as recently as just last month. And, he had been grilled by lawmakers on the Hill about some of the stuff that he was doing. I mean, there was like some kind of $100,000 trip to Morocco. And again, that phone, I mean, there was just so many different things. And I think that maybe it was just sort of a snowball effect. Conservatives really liked what Scott Pruitt was doing when it came to rolling back regulations. And I would imagine that anybody that the president really installs there would be of the same mind. And in fact, right now we know that the deputy administrator, Andrew Wheeler, will be in charge for now. Already people are crying foul because he's worked for the coal industry and he's has uncertain views on climate change. But that's to be expected. If somebody else gets the permanent job, then they would have to go through obviously a confirmation process. But yeah, this has been really fascinating watching Scott Pruitt. Some people call him really the swampiest of the swamp creatures.
Tell you, he visited us a month ago yesterday, and we had him on, and the guy was, well, look, everybody in Washington's high speed, but he was very personable, very warm, answered every question we had. He was here to talk to the governor about relinquishing some of the EPA controls over Idaho's water and streams and air and such. But I found him to be, pretty high speed on, up-to-date stuff. But, you're in that bubble and that pressure, and then all of a sudden, Rachel, as you've covered these stories for years, you get to be that D word, that dreaded distraction.
Mm-hmm. And I think that could have been part of it because it was just always going on. However, with the news cycle that we've been in for a long time, it seemed like, the Scott Pruitt story would have led the headlines for months in any other type situation. But I think that's maybe why it carried on as long as it did. He just really flew under the radar, even though these were pretty sizable stories in and of themselves.
And Rachel, finally, president in rare form last night in Montana.
Yeah, that was 2016 Donald Trump. I mean, he went after everybody. Of course, the media, which is his favorite target, but Elizabeth Warren challenging her to take a DNA test, calling her Pocahontas. He defended liking Vladimir Putin and said we need to get along with people. He blasted the Russia probe, called it a distraction again. Of course, John Tester, who he was there to criticize because the Republican running, he wants him to lose his seat in the Senate. I mean, John Tester was the senator who brought to light some allegations on Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who was the president's pick to lead the VA. So he blasted Tester. He was certainly in rare form last night.
Rachel, I hope you get some time to rest. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Rachel Sutherland. All right, Brother Pete, good to have you on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Kevin, good morning. I would like, in light of I call them the Democrat propaganda ministry coverage of that nutcase on the Statue of Liberty and how deeply concerned the left is over separating children from parents, children of illegal aliens, that is. I'd like to point out that there are thousands of children in America being separated from their parents continuously through the year, and they never even know if they'll see their parents again. And these are the children of our U.S. military people. And the media doesn't really care about that. You never see any coverage of that.
It's a very good point.
But those folks, they're going overseas, and they don't know when they'll come back or even if they'll come back. And the media the leftist media in this country, that as far as they're concerned, that never happens. They don't care. They care about people who are not citizens, people who are here criminally, but they don't care about the folks in the military.
They never have.
Nope. And as a side note, just for Liberal Steve and on Scott Pruitt, as far as I'm concerned, what Scott Pruitt did with the EPA regs on the waters of the United States, where under Obama the EPA was claiming that a puddle in your backyard was a federal water, and Scott Pruitt put an end to that. And I'll tell you what, man, as far as I'm concerned, he was a success as leading the EPA just by doing that.
Well, it goes to show you that if you get on the libs list, they're not going to rest till you're gone. You know, we can go back to all the abuses that the press and the government didn't cover under Obama.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like the tarmac meeting about the grandchildren. And Hillary selling, 20% of our uranium reserves to a Russian company?
Well, that's when the Russians were good. Or Mitt Romney saying Russia is the threat, and then Obama going, go back to the 1980s to get your foreign policy.
Yeah. But it's okay because, you know, the media in this country, you know, they really care about turning us into a socialist dictatorship. And so we should all just be happy to be like Venezuela if we ever get there.
I see. Well, Pete, thank you for listening. We appreciate you, brother.
Kevin, thank you for being there. It's you're my morning kickoff, man. I need you to get the blood flowing.
Well, thank you, brother Pete. Take care.
You too.
All right, our great friend Pete from Mountain Home. Phone number's here, 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Before we get to the president, this will get your blood boiling. This is the Statue of Liberty protester after she was hauled away.
In a democracy, we do not whip children. We do not put children in cages, period. There is no debating it. Nothing you can say to me will justify putting children in cages.
Right. Of course, children were put in cages by Obama and Clinton and others. I never thought I would say it, that we have someone who is standing up to the libs, standing up to the politically correct. Look, no one wants to put kids in cages. But on the other hand, we can't afford to continue to bring people in to pay for them and to give them free rides. And you have a lot of hardworking people. Look, this is a contentious issue. And especially here in Idaho, where we have a lot of people coming in from other countries, and we get to know them. Maybe we like them. Maybe we think it's going to be a good time. I can recall working at a place where we had, and it was a media company. It was a broadcast company where we had illegals there. And we were told that if we blew the whistle, and remember, these stations are licensed by the government. So imagine if it was ever determined that you had a broadcast entity that were employing illegal aliens, right? So we were threatened with our jobs because you had a very progressive agenda. And you think to yourself, hey, I'm working hard, I'm doing this. And look, these guys are working hard as well, but one person is here following the rules and one person isn't. It's like the workplace. And that's one thing, you know, we joke a little. People say, well, you're front runner Kevin Miller. You got Alabama. You like the Patriots. You liked Oregon when Chip Kelly was there. What are you going to be, a UCLA fan? No. I love structure. I think we all crave structure and accountability. And when an organization, or in this case, our beautiful country, and make no mistake about it, it is a beautiful country. But when you start having select rules for people, when you start saying, well, Kevin Miller, you're going to pay this much in taxes, you're going to get your car registered, you're going to get insurance, you're going to be responsible because this is what the government requires, right? It's kind of like in Ada County, you should get your vehicle checked for emissions. Nobody likes to do it, but then we have clean air in Ada County and in Canyon County, right? Those are the rules. You follow the rules. But when you have people break the rules and there is no reciprocity for breaking the rules, then you have chaos, which is what we're seeing. And the president, and this has gone on with, I mean, look, President Bush tried to get an amnesty program through, and it was due to people like you and me, conservatives around the country, that stopped him. Republicans stopping a Republican president. It's not going to, an amnesty bill is not going to make the problem go away. It's going to make it worse. And if you like living in enclaves where it doesn't resemble America, go for it. And we have this woman protesting and such. She'll be, not only arrested, but sentenced to some hard time for this. But it's not about touchy-feely. Look, I wish I had enough money to take care of all the animals at the Meridian Canine Rescue. I love them all. I would go, if my wife didn't stop me, I'd go broke. But I can't afford that. You can't afford that. And fiscally, we have to look at taking care of Americans when you have so many Americans out of work. Did you see the story in the paper? Sykes just laid off 200, 300, 400 people. And it's odd because the Sykes company have been running ads on billboards and newspapers, careers, and everything else. And you always thought, well, worst case scenario, I can get a job at Sykes. That's not the case anymore. Nothing is guaranteed. You have to earn it. But when you come to this country and you get a free bologna sandwich and the rest of us are making the bologna, then you have resentment and chaos. And this is where we are. And this is what the president is fighting against. I'd love to hear from you next. We've got Liberty Linda rolled up, Cindy from Caldwell rolled up. You could be next and join them at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's go to Liberty Linda. Good morning, Liberty Linda.
Yes, good morning, Kevin. I was watching President Trump last night in Montana with a girlfriend, and she said, oh, he's just bragging. And I said, yes, he's bragging. Most presidents make us promises when they're running. And, we expect him to fulfill perhaps maybe one or two. But President Trump, he has not only fulfilled the things he promised us, but he has gone the extra mile. I think it's absolutely marvelous. All I can say is, what a man, what a man.
Well, coming up next hour, we're going to play a few clips of that and get your reaction. But it would be great to see him in Idaho. It's a challenge for us simply because we don't have the libs.
Absolutely. And I was thinking last night, he's getting closer. I mean, Montana, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from us.
Well, I was counting on Scott Pruitt to put in a good word for us, but that won't be happening.
No, I don't think so. Not now.
You're funny.
And, we have to have our prayers for those boys that are in that cave. I have a friend that's a deep-sea diver, and he said even the best of deep-sea divers can freak out when they're in the water. And so, anyway, I think we should keep our prayers for them. And I'm just so happy about what our president is doing for us. I mean, isn't he truly unbelievable?
He is. He's amazing.
Yeah, just like you. We say that about you every morning too.
Well, bless you, dear. But I'm far from the president.
Yeah. Well, you're pretty close to him last night. He is getting closer, and so let's keep our fingers crossed that soon he will come here. and visit us.
That would be the
helped
best
put him in
ever.
office, right?
That'd be the best ever.
Yep, it would be. It'd be wonderful. And Idaho is one of the most beautiful states in the Union.
It is.
It is. And we have some of the most beautiful people here as well.
Well, certainly some of the most generous and giving. You're right about that.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely wonderful people. But anyway, I just wanted to call and say that President Trump, as far as I'm concerned, just keep on bragging.
All right, Liberty Linda, take care.
You as well. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Traffic.
Rick Ebbert.
All right, Cindy, hang on. We will get to you starting next hour. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. We will review what the president had to say last night and get your calls at 580-5436. 580-KIDO, the president in rare form.
The only way you're never going to have to use it, if it's so powerful, so good, so strong, that nobody wants to play games. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We'll never have to use it.
There we have it, the president laying down the smackdown about how much he loves the military. Coming up next, bringing President Trump to the Treasure Valley. That is our mission. Wouldn't that be great? Let's make it happen together. Details next. Fox News on your stations for Fox News, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning.